pure honey. And happy to see our speaker also has been sipping. Let me take a look at the program. I think the program has been sent to me. Let me just open. Founders Day program. Yeah, I've seen. Has Imam Sahab already come?
Yes, sir, he's here. He's here with us.
Good, good. मेरा सलाम कहिएगा उनको.
जी जरूर सर. Just join shortly. He's there. He's on the screen.
अस्सलामुअलैकुम.
जी वालेकुम सलाम. कैसे हो हुजूर? बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. आप
अल्लाह का शुक्र है. आपके मिजाज कैसे हैं?
ये भी एक नया तजुर्बा है. ये भी देख लीजिए तजुर्बा.
हाँ नया तजुर्बा तो है.
Because this is such an important day today, and I didn't want to, because we have started it regularly. Has the BBC joined us? I don't see him logged in.
जी अस्सलामुअलैकुम.
वालेकुम सलाम. कैसे हैं आप? How are you?
अल्लाह का फजल. आप कैसे हैं?
Has Professor Batra joined us? Professor Batra, are you here with us?
I'm here. Can you see me?
I'm.
Can you hear me?
I can see everybody now. Hello, Professor
Okay,
Masood Parvez. Hello, Professor Batra.
Hey.
Professor Balaram, you know that Professor Batra has joined us as the former director of FNASc, has joined us as the Dean of Academics.
Oh, wonderful.
And Professor Ahmad Kamal, former director of IISc. You must be knowing him.
NIPER.
No, sorry, NIPER
and IISc.
How
are you, Professor Balaram?
I know, but I don't know.
Professor Afshar also join us. Come up, Professor Afshar. What I would request everybody to please turn off your video and also turn off your audio. Only when you are talking, you can turn it on. Otherwise, this way the connectivity would be very good. I see Professor Bahar Ahmad also joining us. Assalamu alaikum, Bahar sir. Quite a few people have joined. Right now, as of now, 52 people, 53 people have joined, but I'm sure we'll have an oversubscription. We have made arrangement for parallel streaming on YouTube. It's not easy to find the slot from Professor P. Balaram, India's most prolific writer and one of the most respected name in science. I will give my note of thanks to you when I have a chance to speak, but I would like to personally thank you, Professor Balaram, for having agreed to be with us on this day. Been wanting to request you to be here. Happy that you are here today. The bell at the home rings so you can make out that I'm calling from home. So I can see you're also in your office, not in your office, but your home.
No, I'm in my home. I have the job of looking after my 91-year-old father-in-law.
Your father, your wife, three of you were down with COVID. This is literally walking on the fire for you. Three of you simultaneously in a COVID hospital. That was, I don't know how you managed this, but I salute you for this strength that the Almighty gave you to.
You have no choice.
You had no choice, absolutely.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. How are you? I can also see Professor Farhan Jalil joining us.
I'm fine, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Professor Beg has joined us. Salman Sabir Sahib has joined us. Biki Sahib has joined us. Many of our colleagues have joined us. We still have 4 more minutes to start on the dot. At 3:30. One thing which we do here very religiously, Professor Balaram, is we have learned to respect time. Otherwise, we know time will not respect us. So That's something we did at Hyderabad University, and we have also done this at Jamia Hamdard. And I'm very happy that all my colleagues are absolutely a stickler for time. Unless there are some technical snags, then we cannot help it. But I see Dr. Zeenat Iqbal also having joined us. I can see it. You are not joining from your own, you are joining on Mirza Rahil Beg's ID.
Please, sir, I'm in the computer center with Imam Saab and Rahil Saab.
Okay. Good.
We were here since 2:30. Alhamdulillah, all is aligned. Inshallah, all will go well.
Wonderful.
Being a different platform, I'm a little jittery, but inshallah, it will all go well.
Wonderful. COVID is here to stay with us. According to the WHO Director General, the effects of COVID would be felt for the next few decades. And according to a study carried out by mathematical modeling by MIT group, by March 2021, about 3 billion people would be affected. 60 to 120 million people would have died. And India would be the worst affected country. In our own campus today, we have 6 cases of COVID now. Today, 2 more new cases in the residences. We are really, Delhi is seeing a resurgence of COVID because people are not following the rules at all. They are all going out and mixing as if there's no issue at all. But anyway,
new cases are in addition to those finance.
Yeah. Today only we got 3 more new cases. Just today. And many of these cases we don't know because these are students who have come back to join our GHRCA IIS Coaching Academy hostel, and they are being asked to test themselves. I don't see our registrar having joined us. Has he joined? Registrar Sahab, are you with us? Registrar Sahab, are you with us?
I don't think so, sir. I think I cannot see.
साहब देख लीजिए उनको कुछ some issues तो technical issues तो नहीं है उनके computer पर. We had to seal our office, Professor Balaram, because of this establishment section and finance section. 2 of our people have been found to be COVID positive. So today, and for 48 hours, we have sealed the office completely. And this is being sanitized. My secretary had to go halfway back. She did not know, so she went back to her home. He told her to come today. Bad time.
Everywhere. NII also has couple of cases, students.
So there are a few more seconds and then we'll start.
So students have started joining now, no?
Good.
Okay.
Very good.
More than 100 have joined already.
92, 104 have joined already. Yeah, suddenly it has climbed.
Yeah, it is increasing in numbers now. All students are joining.
Yeah, 105 have joined.
Yeah.
I think more have joined because just to listen to Professor Balaram. They all must have heard about him. They all are here to see this young man who has been decorated with the Year of Science Chair Professor.
That's
Only
the wrong
2 years.
adjective.
Sorry?
I said it's the wrong adjective to describe me. I'm anything but young.
Sir, we are live streaming this on YouTube also, so many will join there.
Good. So I think we can start now. Zeenat, please start.
With your permission, sir, I'll start the deliberations.
Yes. Please start.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to all the revered audience. I acknowledge the presence of our revered guest. In Professor Balaram, who has been very, very kind despite her own engagements. He has been with us today with all his absolutely blessings to us. I welcome you all to this one of the unique type of Founders Day celebrations. We have been used to celebrating this great day the birthday of our beloved founder, Janab Hakim Abdul Hamid Sahib. Might Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise his echelons in Jannah, Ameen, with all fervor, enthusiasm and energy. The beelines of all Hamdardians to the Convention Center to be a part of the day-long festivities have been sights to cherish and enjoy. We miss that sorely today. These unprecedented and unfamiliar times could have stolen those beautiful sights, but our spirits and enthusiasm is intact. As it is said, the show must go on. And so here we are, riding on the Digital India wave. Jamia Hamdard welcomes you all to the Founders Day 2020 celebrations on this virtual platform. We are indeed blessed to have with us the great scientist, as I just said. I acknowledge the presence of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Sahib, and all the dignitaries who have joined us on this great occasion. We welcome you all, sir. I acknowledge the presence of my senior faculty, my colleagues, and also the beloved students who have shown all their enthusiasm throughout our journey, which we call as the Jamia Hamdard. Before we initiate into the deliberation of this beautiful and blessed afternoon, might I request our Imam Sahib for the rendition of a few verses from the Holy Quran. He shall translate this as well. Might I request Imam Sahib to initiate the recitation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كانوا قليلا من الليل ما يهجعون وبالأسحار هم يستغفرون وفي أموالهم حق للسائل والمحروم. कुरान की ये 3 छोटी सी आयतें हैं जो मैंने अभी पढ़ी हैं आपके सामने, और 27वें पारे में ये है सूरह ज़ारियात और उसकी 17, 18, 19 नंबर की आयतें हैं। इसमें जो मैसेज आज मुझे नज़र आया वो मैं आपको अपनी ज़बान में आपके सामने पेश कर रहा हूँ। इस दुनिया के बनाने वाले ने, हमारे आपके मालिक ने अपने को बहुत खास और बहुत ही चोजन चुने हुए बंदों के बारे में कुछ बातें कही हैं और उनकी कुछ बहुत स्पेशल क्वालिटीज बताई हैं। वो क्वालिटीज अल्लाह ने इन आयतों में जिक्र की हैं। वो क्या हैं, पहले आप सुन लीजिए कि हमारे जो खास बंदे हैं जिनको हम बहुत पसंद करते हैं वो रातों को बहुत कम सोते हैं। कैसी अजीब सी बात है, रातों को वो लोग बहुत कम सोते हैं और जब सुबह उठते हैं तो हमसे माफी मांगते हुए उठते हैं और उनके पैसों में, उनके माल में जरूरतमंदों का भी हक होता है। चाहे कोई उनसे मांगे या ना मांगे, वो सबकी मदद करने के लिए तैयार रहते हैं। ये 3 बातें, ये 3 क्वालिटीज जो जिक्र की हैं कुरान में, आप आज के इस दौर में देखिए। और ये जब ये थोड़े दिन पहले हमारे हकीम साहब हमारे बीच में मौजूद थे, ये तीनों खूबियां उनके अंदर मौजूद हैं। वो रातों को बहुत कम सोते थे, सुबह उठ के वो अक्सर यहाँ कैंपस में जब रहते थे तो टहलते हुए सबको नजर आते थे और नमाज पढ़ते हुए दिखाई देते थे लोगों को। और ये तो दुनिया जानती है कि उनका माल जो है वो सबके लिए था, कोई अपना माल उन्होंने अपने पास ही नहीं रखा। मैंने हमेशा बचपन से देखा है हकीम साहब को और बिल्कुल इन्हीं हालात में देखा कि वो रातों को बहुत कम सोए और सुबह उठे हैं तो नमाज पढ़ी, नमाज पढ़ने के बाद कैंपस में उन्होंने वॉकिंग की और उसके बाद फिर उनका पैसा सबके लिए। एक छोटी सी बात जिक्र करके मैं अपनी बात खत्म करूंगा। करीब 32 साल पहले की बात है, मेरी शादी हुई। मेरे फादर हकीम साहब के साथ काम करते थे बैठकर, तो हकीम साहब आ गए मुबारकबाद देने के लिए और मेरे फादर से कहने लगे, जो जामिया हमदर्द में इस्लामिक स्टडीज डिपार्टमेंट के हेड भी थे, प्रोफेसर भी थे यहाँ पर, उनसे कहने लगे, फारूकी साहब बहू को लाइए मेरे सामने जल्दी से, मैं उसको कुछ दूंगा। तो हमारे वालिद ने कहा कि वो पर्दा करती हैं, आपके सामने इस तरह नहीं आ सकती। हकीम साहब ने बिल्कुल बुरा नहीं माना, कहा कोई बात नहीं, कोई बात नहीं, मुझे मेरी तरफ से 500 रुपए उनको दे दीजिएगा। तो उस जमाने की बात है, ये 32-33 साल पहले की बात है, 500 रुपए उन्होंने दिए। तो आज मैं जब इस आयत को पढ़ रहा था, समझ रहा था, क्योंकि जो लोग मांगे उनका भी हक है, जो ना मांगे उनको भी नवाजना शुरू करते थे हकीम साहब। आज के दिन वो दुनिया में आए थे, हम लोगों के सामने अब वो मौजूद तो नहीं है, लेकिन जो चीज़ें उन्होंने बना दी, जो इंस्टीट्यूशंस वो कायम करके चले गए, हकीम साहब उसकी शक्ल में, हकीम साहब इन इमारतों की सूरत में हमारे पास हमेशा हमेशा के लिए मौजूद रहेंगे। जब तक कि ये इमारतें जिंदा हैं, हकीम साहब के कारनामे जिंदा हैं, हकीम साहब फना होने वाले नहीं हैं इंशाअल्लाह। सदक़ल्लाह।
Jazakallah khairan kasira. Thank you so much, Imam Sahib, just giving the bio sketch of our late founder in such a beautiful way. Being completely steeped in the spirit of Hamdard, Abdul Hamid was a true benefactor of society and a great Hakim, a healer whose constituency was as large as humanity. He was an institution builder, a dedicated educationist, a true Muslim, and a patriot. The master physician had his sensitive fingers on the pulse of the age, trying to cure the ailments with the best elixirs of social service and education. Hakim Sahib became a living legend of the Unani system of medicine, but refused to be circumscribed by it. He transformed it into a scientific discipline and made its formulations more efficacious through research and experiment. He wanted to remedy the chronic antipathy between the Unani and modern systems of medicine, believing that their merits should be adapted and harmonized. He further wanted to enlist them as collaborators in the great venture of modern healthcare that was universally affordable and accessible. Hakim Abdul Hamid Sahib planned mainly, but not exclusively, for the educational and economic uplift of Indian Muslims who were mired in ignorance and backwardness. He promoted employment-friendly education in professional and technical fields, particularly among the Muslim community. The university which stands today is just epitome of his dream. The man with golden touch, he transformed uncountable lives. There's a small video to just actually put forward this message in his own voice and in his own way. We'll just share a small video on the journey of our beloved founder. He's seen there walking down the lane in the beautiful campus, and you will actually remember those who have not been fortunate enough to be seeing him would get that feel today and his blessings. Allah give him the highest echelons in Jannah. Ameen. This is a story of faith, hope, and humanity.
Zinat, there was a sound to this video. Why is sound not coming?
The sound is, sir, it is audible from our end. The sound is not audible to them.
Zinat, yeah, we are not able to get.
Yeah, it is not audible. It is not audible.
Yeah.
I wish you could hear the sound as well, but that's okay, it doesn't matter. You can see the most eminent personalities, Prince Charles, Rahul The former Prime Minister inaugurating the building. Hakim Sahib walking down his residence. It's very nice, symbolic. The fire will never burn out. The candle will continue. Thank you so much. Thank you. Zira, continue. Zeenat, please.
I'm extremely sorry for the voice glitch at this end. This had a voice of, it was having a voiceover, but I think the pictures were themselves absolutely speaking for themselves. This is primarily the journey which our founder has taken, and now we stand where we are today. So we have, next we are going to play the Jamia Hamdard Tarana, which exactly is the culmination of whatever he dreamt of. So Jamia Hamdard Tarana will be played just in a moment.
Mr. Balaram, means a song of Jamia. I don't know if IISc Bangalore has a song or not, but Jamia Hamdard and Aligarh Muslim University and most universities have. We have a convention that we'll start with our own Tarana and end with the national anthem. We are not able to hear the Tarana.
I think the audio is off, Zina, for the Tarana. Rahul may have, or Rahil may have to.
Okay, Dr. Zenith, if you allow, can I play from my end? Dr. Zenith?
Yes, sir.
Gulzar this side, yeah. If you allow, I can play from my end, Dr. Zenith. Am I audible, Dr. Zenith?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can play it from my end. If you allow.
Please do that. Gulzarji, please do that. Please do that.
Just playing it.
Please do that.
Nobody can hear the Tarana. Let's continue now. Let's continue. It's deemed to have been played already. Move on now. Dr. Zinat Iqbal, can you hear me?
I will, sir, take it forward. We have now the time for the welcome address by our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Sahib. He is a well-known scientist and he has been with us since 2017. He has been an outstanding scientist with a lot of accolades associated with his work in medicinal chemistry. Might I request to please cast the welcome address.
Thank you, Zinat. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone. The Honorable Vice Chancellor Sahab, Professor Balaram. I would like to welcome you all, first of all all the audience who are connected online for this Founders Day lecture. And I would just start with a little bit of Hakim Sahab's significant aspects, what he has done, what type of institutions, although it'll take a lot of time but since I have to speak within 5 minutes, I would say that the name of Hamdard was coined by his father. And that exactly is about empathy, compassionate, all these aspects in the name of Hamdard. And he was basically, a founder of several institutions to start with. And foremost, he started in 1950s with the All India Unani TB conference, where he got several ideas. And based on that, in 62, he started with Hamdard National Foundation. And followed by that, also, he started an Institute of History of Medicine and Medical Research. And in 63, he started Institute of Islamic Studies, followed by Hamdard TB College in 63, and then Safia Hamidia TB College, that was in Burhanpur in same year. Then in 65, he started Hamdard Research Clinic and Nursing Home. So all these were later shifted to the Hamdard Nagar. And then he also had literally, I would say the aspects which were from the academic and literary point of view. He also started the Talib Academy in 69. So basically, I would say that in 72, amongst the institutions which he started was an Hamdard College of Pharmacy. And in 73, the Business and Employment Bureau, and then the list goes on. I would just tell some important ones. In 81, he started the Hamdard Educational Society, and then also in 82, Majidia Hospital, and in 84, the Rufaida School of Nursing, and things like that. And the most important was in 89, it was Jamia Hamdard. And this became deemed to be university in 89. And most of these institutions which he started independently were brought into this campus. And apart from that, he started also like Hamdard Study Circle, where the candidates will come to get prepared for the civil services, which is again a very important activity at Jamia Hamdard. Then the next year he started with Hamdard Public School. And almost the last thing which he did was the Hamdard Archives and Research Center. This was, in fact, constructed as with a very unique architecture. So these are some of the institutions which he thought of, and particularly the university. And I think this vision and dream of Hamdard has been, of Hakim Sahab, for the formation of a university was something remarkable. Because today what we see with respect to Jamia Hamdard as a university, we have been into NIRF among the top 25 universities, I would say, in the whole country. A month back, I would say, or less than that, we have been for the first time recognized by the Times Higher Education, which we achieved, as the world ranking institution in the band of 800 to 1,000. So wherein, in fact, there are institutions, a couple of IITs also in this band from India, and also the Aligarh Muslim University. So we are really proud to have come to this stage. And this is all due to the vision and the dream and what it's thought of. And apart from that, the girls in this university happen to be much more than the boys. So that is again for that he has contributed with respect to the women's education and their upliftment. So this is where I think we have been doing extremely well in all the aspects today. And I would like to compliment our Honorable Vice Chancellor for having initiated this Founders Day lecture for the last few years. And this is something because the tribute to the Hakim Saab is very important while this whole university was shaped up. And as you all know, today's speaker, Professor Balaram, a very well-known scientist and an academician. And he has, in fact, I would say that I consider that he has been very much instrumental in bringing most of the chemicals, chemical, biological, all these sciences with some sort of a bridging tool. Because in 1970s, early or rather in 70s, mostly people were very much fixed to their own tight boundaries with respect to the sciences which they study or whatever it is. But I think it was Professor Balaram who motivated most of the people here in the sciences that it's not just one specific science, but you can do. So for instance, I would say that he brought in something like chemical biology, wherein chemistry and biology has been blended. I mean, this is where today not many people have started this as a specific subject itself, where this blending has happened. So let me thank Professor Balaram for being with us and also going to speak on this very important occasion of Jamia Hamdard. So let me welcome you all once again, and I would like to welcome Professor Balaram for being with us, and a formal introduction of Professor Balaram will be done by Zina. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for just taking through the milestones of the Jamia Hamdard University and from where we started the journey and to this 2020, where we have just figured in the Times Higher Education ranking and falling in the cadre of as high as 800 plus. Thank you so much, sir, for doing the honors. This is the time which we were awaiting for long, and listening to Professor Balaram would be a treat. There is no question, no doubts on that. I take this privilege to present to the worldwide audience the formal introduction to this gentleman who is known for his humility and absolutely known for his science. Professor Padmanabhan Balaram obtained his undergraduation, that is Bachelor in Science, from the coveted Pune University. He proceeded to do his master's from IIT Kanpur, and he did his PhD in chemistry from Carnegie Mellon University, USA. He was a research associate at Harvard University. He served as the faculty of the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, from the year 1973 to 2014, which was the year of his superannuation. While pursuing his very illustrious career in academics and research, he occupied various coveted positions at the institute and was its director from the year 2005 to 2014. He has contributed extensively to the areas of molecular biophysics and chemical biology. Professor Balaram's main area of research has been the investigation of the structure, conformation, and biological activity of designed and natural peptides. He has been a major contributor to the evaluation of factors influencing the foldings and conformations of designed peptides. And he has investigated structural elements playing a key role in the formation of secondary structural motifs such as helices, beta turns, and sheets. All the biologists and the scientists appreciate this, how big this contribution is. He was also the editor of Current Science from the year 1995 to 2013, during which he authored not less than 300 editorials on diverse subjects related to science and scientists. He has also authored close to 400 research papers in various journals of repute. A fellow of many academies, including the National Academy of Sciences, he is the recipient of several awards and honors, including the most coveted Padma Shri, which he was bestowed on in the year 2002, and the next civilian award, which is Padma Bhushan, in the year 2014. He is also the recipient of the R. Bruce Merrifield Award 2021 of the American Peptide Society. He is currently associated with the National Center for Biological Sciences, Bangalore, as the DST-Year of Science Chair Professor. This is just the cul de CV. I would have gone on and on while talking of his achievements. We are indeed blessed, sir, to have you here as the Founders Day lecture speaker. And the topic which you have chosen is definitely the one which connects with all of us. This is chemical, biology, and unity of nature. The stage is yours, sir. All over to you. We welcome you.
Thank you very much. I will begin by sharing my screen.
Ji, sir.
And, can you see it?
It will, sir, in a moment. Yes, sir. We are able to. We are able to.
I'll go to full screen.
Ji, sir.
Full screen.
So please put it on the full screen.
I put it on full screen. Let me know if you're seeing it on full screen.
No, we can't see the full screen yet, Balaram, Professor Balaram.
Not yet.
You can't see the full screen yet. Okay.
We can see it, but not full screen. You have to click the full screen button, but somehow it's not seen. Doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, I guess I am presenting. What do you see now?
F5, press F5.
Okay, let me try. How is it?
We can see a full screen. Yes, thank you.
This is fine. This is fine.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for coming to listen to me. It's indeed a great privilege to be able to give this lecture in memory of the founder of your university. I did not have the honor of meeting Hakim Abdul Hamid Sahib, but I realized from what I read about him that he was a great philanthropist, and it's really because of his generosity and his vision that you have the Jamia Hamdard University. But I was struck in reading about him that the very first institute that he set up on the campus that you now occupy was an institute of the history of medicine and medical research. This is remarkable because in many ways, the history of medicine and medical research and the history of chemistry and the history of biology, what is necessary for modern science, are all intimately intertwined. Traditional medicine, whether it is the Unani system, whether it is Ayurveda, or whether it is the ancient Greek system or the Chinese system, traditional medicine is based on observation, experimentation, and documentation. And it is really over the centuries that many of the remedies, the diagnosis, the methods of traditional medicine have been documented. Unfortunately, much of what is documented about traditional medicine is documented in languages which have over the years become familiar to less and less people. And therefore, we still have a great deal to learn about medicines from nature and of what traditional medicine has to offer modern medicine. The subject of integrative medicine today is very popular. But in thinking about medicine, you must think about two subjects, chemistry and biology. And that is what I want to talk to you about. On the slide here, I have put the two iconic figures of chemistry and biology. Symbolically, these disciplines are held up on pillars which have been built by Mendeleev on the left, who gave us the periodic table, and Darwin on the right, who gave us the ideas of natural selection and biological evolution. So Mendeleev's table and Darwin's book are really the cornerstones of modern chemistry and modern biology. In between, you will find an image. That is the image of the coronavirus in all its manifestations as you see on the internet, beautifully colored with computer graphics. Now, the coronavirus is really today the single object that occupies all our thinking. And you really have to ask questions about the chemistry and biology of the virus. I will begin by quoting from Darwin. you will be able to read it off the slide. What Darwin said is there is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one. And that while this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. I would like you to think about this sentence. It is a very beautiful sentence. We have the earth forming, we have chemistry coming into being at the very start, and then you have biology slowly emerging and life emerging eventually. The evolution of Darwin's ideas on the origin of life can be traced back to letters which he wrote to his friend Joseph Hooker. As early as 1863, he said it is mere rubbish thinking at present of origin of life. One might as well think of the origin of matter. This is a remarkable sentence because if you want to think of the origin of life, you must think about the origin of matter. You must think about the origin of the earth. You must think indeed of the origin of the universe. But 8 years later, in another letter, he wrote, and I won't read all of it, but if, and oh, what a big if we could conceive in some warm little pond with all sorts of ammonia and phosphoric salts, light, heat, electricity present, that a protein compound was chemically formed. When I saw this, I thought this might be the first time that Darwin's actually written about a protein. At the time he wrote this, nobody knew what protein compounds really were. Biochemistry was yet to be born. Biochemistry itself was born many years later in 1897 when Buchner did his famous experiment where he showed that if you took yeast cell extracts, they were able to carry out the process of cell-free fermentation. And therefore, you did not need the living cell in order to convert sugars into alcohol. And this said that all the ingredients which were necessary for this chemical conversion were in fact present in the cell-free extract. That's the starting point of biochemistry. Look at Mendeleev's periodic table. It will hang in chemistry laboratories. It might even hang in some of your pharmacy laboratories, but nobody will ever give it a second glance. Of all, and this is only a part of the periodic table, which I have truncated. The elements that I've colored in light green are the elements which we know are essential for life. They are the elements of organic chemistry. They're the elements of biochemistry. But the elements which are there in pink, these are really the elements which have been shaded. They are the elements which are also necessary for life. Today, for instance, in the era of the coronavirus, we're always talking about the element zinc. I have not gone further down the periodic table, but today you have enzymes which require tungsten. So biochemistry is also evolving with time. How do these elements form? I can't do better than to quote from a book, The Ascent of Man by Jacob Bronowski. Bronowski made this marvelous BBC series in the early 1970s, and the book is a result of the series. He says, in all the stars, there are going on processes which build up the atoms, one by one, into more complex structure. Matter itself evolves. The word comes from Darwin in biology, but it is the word that changed physics in my lifetime. For any student who is listening, this is a beautiful sentence. When he says matter itself evolves, the word comes from Darwin in biology, but it is the word that changed physics in my lifetime. Where does all the carbon atom in all the organic molecules which constitute us, where does it come from? There is the picture. Carbon, for instance, is formed in a star whenever 3 helium nuclei collide at one spot within less than 1/1,000,000 of a millionth of a second. Every carbon atom in every living creature was formed by such a wildly improbable collision. So when you think about this, you realize that you yourself are an extremely improbable object. You have been formed by some miraculous procedures of chemistry and biology. But evolution has always been a controversial subject. It hasn't been very controversial in India until recent times. But in America, it has always been controversial because fundamentalists, Christians, believe that biological evolution in some way conflicts with the ideas of creation. But one of the most famous disciples of Darwin, Dobzhansky, wrote many years ago, now nearly 50 years ago, he asks, does the evolutionary doctrine clash with religious faith? It does not. It is a blunder to mistake the Holy Scriptures for elementary textbooks of astronomy, geology, biology, and anthropology. Only if symbols are construed to mean what they are not intended to mean can there arise imaginary insoluble conflicts. And I think this rationalization of the coexistence of science and religion by Dobzhansky is something that one must keep in mind. But I will come back to chemistry. And this is most important for you. Arthur Kornberg, the discoverer of the DNA polymerase and one of the most influential biochemists of the 20th century, said this in an article. He called chemistry the lingua franca of the medical and biological sciences. If you don't know chemistry, you should not be studying medicine or biology. That was his thesis. And I believe one of the major deficiencies of education in India is the fact that chemistry is often divorced both from biology and from medicine. It will do a great deal of good for medical research, for pharmaceutical research, for biological research, if chemistry was an integral part of student training. We might ask, what has chemistry done? In the year 2000, as the year 2000 approached, the journal Nature commissioned a series of essays which would appear every week. And some important person would be asked to write these essays and say what was the most important scientific advance of the 20th century. I used to read all these essays because I had the task of writing fortnightly editorials for the journal Current Science. So I was always looking for a topic. And then I came across this essay, which has remained in my mind. This was an essay by a Canadian scientist, Václav Smil, who wrote that the most important scientific advance of the 20th century was the Haber-Bosch process for the industrial synthesis of ammonia. He wrote, the world might be better off without Microsoft and CNN. Today, if I were to rewrite this, I would say the world might be better off without Twitter and Facebook. And neither nuclear reactors nor space shuttles are critical to human well-being. But the world's population would not have grown from 1.6 billion to today's 6 billion without the Haber-Bosch process. This was in the year 1999. It is the industrial synthesis of ammonia which is the detonator of the population explosion, as he called it. Because from ammonia, you make urea, and urea is the fertilizer. And the moment fertilizer appeared, agricultural yields went up, and the world no longer had famines. So people used to die mostly of famine. And once agricultural production went up, human population sizes also began to grow. But the industrial synthesis of ammonia is this remarkably simple process. It doesn't even look nice. Nitrogen and hydrogen under high pressure and temperature with a catalyst are converted into ammonia, and ammonia then to urea. Nature makes ammonia much better in nitrogen fixation, where it uses an enzymatic catalyst, nitrogenase. But strangely, it also uses an iron molybdenum protein catalyst. You should think about this. Food is probably the single most important quantity, material which is needed for growing populations. And agriculture is critical. And therefore, the first agricultural revolution of the 20th century was the synthesis of ammonia, which led to the industrial synthesis of urea. The second agricultural revolution of the 20th century was what we today call the Green Revolution, but that came from breeding techniques, and that came from biology and from agricultural science. So you can see both chemistry and biology have contributed enormously to agriculture. Here's another example of what chemistry has done. The molecule DDT appeared in the final years of the Second World War. It was so efficient against a large number of insects that malaria incidents went down, typhus, which was important, also was treated, and Paul Muller received the Nobel Prize in 1948 for making DDT. But many years later, Rachel Carson wrote this book called Silent Spray. And this analyzed the effects of spraying insecticides on fields and the many, many side effects that this is having. She said here, we are rightly appalled by the genetic effects of radiation. What was she referring to? She was referring to the effects which had become obvious after the atom bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is 75 years since this was done, and most people who are young have forgotten it. She then asked, how then can we be indifferent to the same effect in chemicals that we disseminate widely in our environment? This was the starting point of the environmental movement. Chemistry, biology, and science in general, physics, all of them, what they produce can be double-edged swords. They can be very useful, but they might also have other consequences. But sometimes when chemistry and biology mix together, we get a more profound understanding of nature. Chemical ecology is a new field, and Tom Eisner, one of its founding fathers, wrote in the year 2003 that chemical ecology is the product of a partnership between biologists and natural products chemists, united by a shared vision and empowered by complementary skills. This is because all communication in biology between organisms, except human beings, all communication is chemical communication. Organisms do not communicate very much by sound. They do not have language, and therefore they have only chemistry. And therefore it is that chemistry which we must understand. In the pharmaceutical sciences, when you look for bioactive natural products, remember that nature is not producing these molecules for your benefit. Plants produce these molecules for their own benefit, for their own survival, for their own evolution over time. Biochemistry is central to understanding the connections between chemistry and biology. I like this statement, which was made by a very famous molecular biologist, Sidney Brenner. He said this again in 2000. Scientists appear to reflect deeply only when we mark the passing of a century, the passing of a decade, or sometimes the passing of a millennium, as happened in the year 2000. Brenner said, I once made the remark that two things disappeared in 1990. One was communism, the other was biochemistry, and that only one of these should be allowed to come back. He was, of course, joking, because he went on to say that biochemistry does not have to be resurrected because it will flourish, because it provides the only experimental basis for the causal understanding of biological mechanisms. Think about this. Biochemistry is central. And I'm going to tell you something about how understanding of chemistry is central. In 1945, a Nobel Prize was given to the Finnish scientist Arturi Virtanen. The citation said for his research and inventions in agricultural and nutritional chemistry, especially for his fodder preservation method. If you ask students, would you like to work on fodder preservation? They will of course say no. But this is very important because in the cold Scandinavian winters, you will have to conserve fodder by putting it into pits and conserving it over the many months of the long winter. But the fodder will decompose because of bacteria. How do we stop harmful fermentations? We can do this by lowering the pH to 4. And Vertanen did this by adding a mixture of sulfuric and hydrochloric acids, which we would not think about today. This is remarkable because it is for this that he got the Nobel Prize. And subsequently, the conservation of fodder in the form of silage and hay has been understood. What are the undesirable organisms? How do we increase the growth of lactic acid producing bacteria? What kind of preservatives must we add while we make silage? This is elementary biochemistry and sometimes elementary chemistry. I'd like to suggest to you that modern biology rests on three pillars. Two of these pillars were erected in the 19th century. Darwin's ideas of evolution, variation, selection, and Mendel's genetics, how characteristics are transferred from one generation to the other. But how are genetics and evolution connected? They can only be connected by chemistry. The detailed chemistry of the nucleic acids which transfer genetic information from one generation to the other. So it is chemistry, the Watson-Crick double helix, Oswald Avery's identification of DNA as the pneumococcal transforming principle. All of these are central to biology, connecting genetics and evolution. Biology itself is about organisms and their behavior. If you study human biology, it is about things that go wrong with human beings. Sometimes today, if you study neurobiology, you might even be trying to understand what happens to our behavior. I also want to tell you something which is not commonly known. There are two dominant technologies of our time. Government is very fond of two words, information technology and biotechnology. In my own state of Karnataka, we have a department which caters both to information technology and biotechnology. But their roots are common. Their roots are in fundamental science. Claude Shannon, who wrote the first paper on information theory, and Oswald Avery, who wrote the first paper showing that DNA is the genetic material, 1944 and 1948. Interestingly, Shannon's PhD thesis is titled An Algebra for Theoretical Genetics. And today in the modern world, it turns out that computer science and biology are coming closer and closer together because the largest amounts of information which are being generated today are in modern biology from DNA sequencing. But this is another chart. Like Mendeleev's periodic table, this will hang in biochemistry laboratories. Nobody will look at it. But occasionally take a look at it. What do you see? You see complexity. Now you can ask, this complexity is what is there in every organism. Fundamental biochemistry is the same, from the simplest microorganism to the most complex animal. How did this evolve? How did this biochemistry come about? Modern literature today, this is an article in Chemical Reviews in 2018, which asks this question, is there a logic to biochemistry? How many molecules do you need, which are absolutely essential? And how will you generate the rest of the complexity? So it is from simplicity. Biochemistry was originally a reductionist discipline. But today, slowly, as we move forward in biology, it turns out that reductionism is giving way to integration. But I want to show you, because many of you deal with natural products in Jamia Hamdard. Look at a natural product, capsaicin. What gives the red pepper its pungency? Look at the structure of capsaicin, which is there, which is on the right-hand side of my slide, and also at the bottom of my slide. It is made by a series of biosynthetic reactions. On the left, a set of reactions which begin with the amino acid phenylalanine. On the right, a set of reactions which begin with the amino acid valine. Eventually, these two pathways combine, and two intermediates then are coupled together to give capsaicin. But what I want to emphasize here is when you go from substance A to substance B, there's an arrow. And across the arrow, we write an enzyme. The very first enzymatic step is phenylalanine ammonia lyase. For every step in biochemistry, in natural product biosynthesis, they're enzymatically catalyzed. Where do these enzymes come from? They are proteins, so they must be genetically coded. And therefore, for every chemical reaction being put together to make capsaicin, you need a gene. So the organism now is investing a huge amount of genetic potential in making what we have always called secondary metabolites. There is nothing secondary about secondary metabolites. Secondary metabolites are important for the biology of the organism itself. But I want to jump ahead to show you an article which I read only in January in the New Yorker magazine, which had a very interesting title, Does Hurting Make Us Human? What was this article based on? This article was really the story of the lady you see pictured at the bottom. She's a Scottish lady who had a remarkable phenotype. She had a near inability to feel awful. She felt no pain. And when something bad happens, her brain immediately searched ways to ameliorate the situation and did not dwell on unhappiness. She had a very, very positive emotional range and a complete insensitivity to physical pain. What do you do with an observation like this when you come across a patient like this? What you do is then you go to the best geneticists, human geneticists who are around, and they were in one of the big British universities, and then this paper appeared. That there is a microdeletion in a pseudogene, which codes for an enzyme really, but it's a pseudogene, very interesting here, for an enzyme called fatty acid amide hydrolase. What does fatty acid amide hydrolase does? I've written the reaction on this slide. Just take a look at it. Just look at the name of the chemical. The chemical is called anandamide. Ananda comes from Sanskrit. Bliss. On the right are two important metabolites in biochemistry, arachidonic acid, a product of oxidative lipid metabolism, and ethanolamine, which you will find both in lipids as well as in neurotransmitters. This enzyme simply breaks down anandamide. But what is anandamide? Let's go back, and this is topical. It will probably come up in Parliament now that Parliament is in session, if they have time to discuss anything at all. Tetrahydrocannabinol on the left. That is the active constituent of marijuana. Indica has been used for centuries. Cannabis has been used in India for centuries, and cannabis, the activities of cannabis, the effect on human beings, is really because of the effects on the brain of tetrahydrocannabinol. But Raphael Mechoulam, an Israeli scientist who determined the structure of tetrahydrocannabinol in the 1960s, asked this question: if this has an effect on the human brain, at which receptor does it act? After all, the brain cannot evolve a receptor to recognize a plant product. It must recognize an endogenous molecule that we ourselves are producing. So he went looking for that molecule, found that molecule in 1992. You can see he wrote his first paper in 1964. He wrote the second paper now in 1992, where he found anandamide. And this is how he found it. This is what scientists do. He took pig brain, he took 4.5 kilograms of brain, and from that he isolated 0.6 milligrams of this molecule. He determined the structure with whatever methods were available and showed biologically that it works on rat brain synaptosomal membranes. It displaces a radio-labeled cannabinol. He had now discovered the endogenous ligand. That means those of us who are always happy probably are producing our own anandamide, or we have a deficiency in the breakdown of anandamide. There are people who do not feel pain as much as other people. This is known. There are different mechanisms for this insensitivity to pain. But one of the mechanisms is the biochemistry of anandamide. Meshulam was asked then, why did you give this name anandamide? After all, it is from Sanskrit, and all this work has been done in Israel. And he said, we looked for a Hebrew name, but as you may well be aware, Jews are not very happy. We do not have words in Hebrew for extreme joy. So it is a name which has come from traditional observations in India on marijuana and its use. Many of you may not know, but in the ongoing discussions on marijuana, which are purely political, with investigative agencies being used to pull up people for drug abuse, it turns out that marijuana was legal in India till 1986. And the legislation which was brought because of pressure from the United States on the then government of India. But now, in the United States, 33 states have made marijuana legal. But in India, there are people now being arrested for possession of 59 grams of marijuana. Now you can imagine how much of tetrahydrocannabinol would have come from 59 grams of a plant material. Many of you are chemists. This lack of understanding of chemistry and biology among people is very, very disturbing, because sometimes it is needed even for legislation. So what does biosynthesis do? It converts substrates into products. It needs enzymes for doing this, and for every enzyme you need a gene. So for a multi-step biosynthetic pathways, you need many, many genes. Francis Crick recognized this a long time ago, and he said this. It is at first sight paradoxical that it is probably easier for an organism to produce a new protein than to produce a new small molecule. He was a physicist, but he had an intuitive idea of where we were going in chemistry and in biology. Even today, most biochemists would find this statement puzzling. A more complex molecule is first produced, and you need many complex molecules in order to produce very simple and small molecules. So I mentioned genes now. And so if I mention genes, where are we today? Today, the genomic revolution, which again, the turning point was in 2000, when the Human Genome Project was formally declared complete. Today, there are 789 eukaryotic genomes. And if you compare them and build a phylogenetic tree, you will see that humans, chimpanzees, rat, mouse, cattle, pig, cattle, sheep, all of them come together fairly close. What does this mean? This is actually telling you that in terms of genetic composition, in terms of biochemistry, animals and human beings are in fact very close. This is what I mean by unity in nature. This is what genetics is telling us. Today, if students want to know how many genes are there, all you have to do is to go to this website, genome size versus protein count, and this is changing in real time. A real tribute to the advances made in computer science and in data science. Archaea, bacteria, eukarya, and viruses, all of them are there. But in the last part of my talk, what I would really like to do is to ask a question about the timetable of evolution. When did all of this begin? We now know that the Earth is about 5.6 billion years old. 5.6 into 10 raised to 9 years old. So we have a lot of time for evolution to proceed. When did the first organisms appear? The first organisms might have appeared somewhere around 4 billion years ago. But most of the organisms which appeared in the period which is now called the Archaic period were archaea. They were the archaebacteria. And these are primitive organisms. Many of them are anaerobic. They do not need oxygen. But there was a great oxygenation event which introduced oxygen into the Earth's atmosphere. This happened between 2 billion and 2.5 billion years ago when the first photosynthetic organisms formed. And once they formed and photosynthesis came about, the atmosphere of the Earth became enriched in oxygen. And after that, we have oxygenic biochemistry beginning to evolve. When you look on the scale, you will find that bacteria have come first, other simple eukaryotes, animals, plants with which we are so much concerned came very much later, and human beings, of course, came very much more recently. You can see right at the bottom of my slide, by the time I've come to the purple color, that is the Cenozoic period where human beings have come. I have taken this from the literature. So the current literature now gives you what I would call a timetable for evolution, which is built on solid science, where you have fossils which have now been recovered, fossils which have been dated, and fossils from which you can even do analysis. How did the first chemicals form? There is this famous experiment done by Stanley Miller in Chicago in the early 1950s. Miller's 1953 paper in Science appeared at the same time as the Watson-Crick paper of 1953 in Nature on the DNA double helix. But it turns out that the only paper which made it to the front pages of the New York Times was Miller's paper. Because what he'd done was he'd taken a mixture of methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water, put them in a bulb, put electrodes in, and passed a spark discharge, and collected the brown material which came to the bottom of the flask. And then he asked what molecules were formed. And these were the molecules which were formed by paper chromatography. He found amino acids, glycine, alanine, beta-alanine. Amazing. So the elementary building blocks of biochemistry were formed from simple chemicals. But what is even more amazing, and this is a tribute to the way science is done in the West, Miller's flask was preserved at the University of Chicago. In India, we have very little respect for preserving anything. Miller's flask was taken, and one of his old students, now himself a very senior scientist, re-examined it by modern analytical methods, and then he found hundreds of molecules present in this mixture. So this gives you an idea of how chemical evolution could have taken place. But biological evolution itself is complex, and that is what people are trying to study now. Rudolf Virchow in 1858 said all cells come from cells. If all cells come from cells, and we have this tree of life, bacteria, archaea, and eukarya, I like this tree because it tells you the place of human beings in biology. Biology, if you take it seriously, is a subject that should be deeply humbling. It should be deeply humbling because it teaches you your place in nature. But what was the original cell from which all these cells began to come? We do not know. And the last universal common ancestor is something that is being investigated. And there's a paper in January 2020 in Nature which talks about this. This is a remarkable paper because the microbiological work which was done in a culturing period of 12 years. Can you imagine a culture, subcultured, grown repeatedly over a 12-year period? Amazing. What do we know about prebiotic chemistry? Here's a molecule, hydrogen cyanide. And if you allow these reactions of hydrogen cyanide with itself and with a little bit of light, you begin to see the appearance of molecules which look like the nucleic acid bases. If you throw in some other simple molecules, you begin to see the nucleic acid bases themselves. So hydrogen cyanide is a precursor. But this is again amazing because hydrogen cyanide is the molecule which was used by Hitler to kill over 6 million Jews in the gas chambers in Nazi Germany. So here is a chemical which is an agent of death, but here is also a chemical which might have been the precursor of life. There is a delicious irony in chemistry sometimes. Where would these molecules have come from? They could have come from the comets. which were bombarding Earth, early Earth, in those long, long years ago. Water might have come from there, and that's where the oceans might have come from. That is one school of thinking. But in one of the comets, the Hale-Bopp comet, the chemical abundances have been measured spectroscopically, and you can see formaldehyde and hydrogen in reasonable amounts. But here is this paper now in 2015 in Nature Chemistry. If you take formaldehyde and you have hydrogen cyanide, and you put these molecules together, and you have a little bit of hydrogen sulfide, and you have copper and light, you can make all these molecules. You can see biochemistry beginning to appear before your eyes in a test tube. There are sugars connected to bases, and you can see that the only thing we have not introduced as yet into this equation is phosphorus. The moment we do that, we are on our way to simulating biochemistry. So the question that one might ask now is, why is life the way it is? Bacteria evolved into complex life just once in 4 billion years of life on Earth. And all complex life shares many strange properties from sex to aging and death. And the grander question, if life evolved on other planets, would it be the same or completely different? It is this book which I've been reading, Nick Lane's The Vital Question, which asks this question and tries to answer it. But I want to ask you a more general question. I want to challenge you with this question. What was the Earth like, and what were human beings like 200,000 years ago? You can get this off the internet because there are a lot of such studies. About 200,000 years ago, even the precursors for human beings were located only in very small regions of the world, in those very light gray patch that you see on the eastern side of Africa. It is that eastern side of Africa where the first traces are now found from paleontology. Then there is the spreading of the gray everywhere, and this is 32,000 years ago or 34,000 years ago. And look at this, they're still gray. None of you know what happened 32,000 years ago. Nobody can say what happened 32,000 years ago except modern scientists who can go back, date, and look at DNA, look at chemicals and so forth in these. Let's come to what I was taught as AD1, but which is now the current era, the first year, 2,000 years ago. Now you can see human beings have spread everywhere. There is now all the civilizations which we talk about have come in India, in Persia, in the Mediterranean, in China, everywhere. Now, of course, if you get DNA, ancient DNA will rewrite the prehistory of India. This is a statement, a somewhat controversial statement, but one which one should read and try and understand, which is made by a journalist, Tony Joseph, in his book, Early Indians. Early Indians draws from a fascination with the Harappan civilization. Who were the people who built the largest civilization of the time, and where did they go? He then asked the question, how much of population genetics, how much of DNA extracted from individuals who lived tens of thousands of years ago been studied? What is it telling us? And this is from another book. Look at this. The x-axis 2014 is more or less the starting point. This is the year I retired. When I was introduced, as Zenith used the rather quaint term which is used in India called superannuation. I never really understood what it means. It means that old people are sent out to graze in the fields. And this was in the year 2014. But the ancient DNA boom has happened after that. Because we now know how to extract DNA, we know how to sequence DNA, and therefore we can now analyze this. And this is wonderful, because one can now look at connections. So in a way, history and biology are connected. I want to draw your attention to another book, which many people who read it may not agree with it, but they should still read it. It's one of those few books which I read from beginning to end in a fairly short span of time. Sapiens by the Israeli historian Yuval Harari. For a historian, I felt that Harari had a much better understanding of biology than many biologists have, because they are so immersed in technicalities. Harari says that the immense diversity of imagined realities that sapiens invented and the resulting diversity of behavior patterns are the main components of what we call cultures. Once cultures appeared, they never cease to change and develop, and these unstoppable alterations are what we call history. He then says the cognitive revolution is accordingly the point when history declared its independence from biology. If you go back to those slides which I showed you from the internet and ask what were we doing 32,000 years ago, that is when our ancestors were beginning to invent agriculture. What did agriculture mean? Which means that you could grow crop and you could grow vegetables and you could eat them. You then no longer needed to hunt animals and be hunter-gatherers. But if you begin agriculture, it means human populations can no longer be nomadic. They cannot move from place to place. Once you have your field, you must protect it. And in order to protect the field, you must have more people. And slowly human societies began to form with the invention of agriculture. Domestication of animals was the next component, which was very important. And it is these are all technological advances. You may not consider them as technology in today's world, but they were technologies of 30,000 years ago. And Harari says this very nicely, that the cognitive revolution, when the human brain began to think, that is when history declared its independence from biology. He says then, from that point onwards, historical narratives replaced biological theories as our primary means of explaining the development of Homo sapiens. To understand the rise of Christianity or the French Revolution, it is not enough to comprehend the interaction of genes, hormones, and organisms. It is necessary to take into account the interaction of ideas, images, and fantasies as well. This is a sentence which is well worth thinking about when people think about the origin of life. But coming back to Bronowski in his final chapters quotes William Wordsworth, who said, "For nature to me was all in all." And then he says, among the multitude of animals which scamper, fly, burrow, and swim around us, man is the only one who is not locked into his environment. His imagination, his reason, his emotional subtlety and toughness make it possible for him not to accept the environment but to change it. And that series of inventions by which man from age to age has remade his environment is a different kind of evolution, not biological, but cultural evolution. I call that brilliant sequence of cultural peaks the ascent of man. But Bronowski is a scientist. What are the cultural peaks that he is talking about? The most important cultural peaks that he talks about are scientific advances that took place over the centuries. In every century, or every few centuries, there was a revolution in our understanding of nature. That is what he calls the ascent of man. That understanding has speeded up in the last 2 centuries. But in a recent paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States, I saw this paper, How Culture Evolves and Why It Matters. And they say cultural transmission is more complex than genetic transmission and may occur on shorter timescales, even within a single generation. This is why education is important and what we teach is important, because this is how you transmit cultural information. Very often we transmit the wrong cultural information, and this way we don't permit cultures to evolve. We keep cultures in the past. But we can ask as a scientist, we can ask a more difficult question. Can cultural factors influence human evolution? And I'll show you one example. Cultural traits can alter the selection pressures on genetic traits and vice versa. And this is also very recent studies which have just appeared in the literature. And this is to do with the practice of drinking milk. Many people have this problem. When they drink milk, they can't digest it. And this is what is called lactose intolerance, because they're unable to break the sugar lactose with the enzyme lactase to galactose and glucose, which are the reaction which I've shown you on the right. Human beings were not built initially to drink milk because dairies had not been invented. Man had not learned to domesticate animals. Man had not learned to milk the cow. Man had not learned to have milk. There was no need for digesting milk. Early man was essentially a meat eater. I myself am a vegetarian, but I know that my ancestors of very long ago would have definitely eaten meat because they needed it for survival. They needed it to feed their biochemistry. So for much of human history, there's been no reason to digest milk. Once agriculture began and dairy farming began, milk became a nutritional product. Over periods of time, because lactose intolerance can cause severe diarrhea, which today one can control, but in early years you would not control, and therefore human populations were simply selected. Many of those who could not drink milk or were severely lactose intolerant probably perished. But today you can go back with modern genetics and analyze the gene for what is called lactase persistence. That is, do we have the lactase gene functional? And sure enough, Scandinavian and European populations have the lactase gene functional. That's what is red in those circles that I've shown. But the yellowish color, which I've taken from the literature, this figure, shows you the preponderance of lactose intolerant populations. So you can see in India, there are more people who are lactose tolerant in the north, and I love the glass of milk, large glass of milk, which is had in the Punjab. I cannot resist it. But when you come to the south where I live, many people are lactose intolerant. But if you go to South Africa, all the way down to Africa, or you go far right to the east, to the southern parts of China, to places like in Sumatra and so forth, the lactose intolerance is much more widespread. We don't have the lactase gene function. How has this happened? Because European populations now have been under selective pressure for a much longer time because of milk drinking. Eventually, if we look back at this distribution, maybe another 5,000 years hence, things may have changed. Is this important? It is important. The authors point out that today, if you were to address nutritional issues in Africa, the United Nations should not be using dairy products to address that. There should be more meat. And this is, again, very important. My real point is that science is important, chemistry is important, biology is important. And together with this, what do we understand? We understand really the unity of nature. But I'm a chemist by training, a biologist over the years. And many years ago, I wanted to invite to the Indian Institute of Science Carl Woese, whom I admired from a distance and had never seen. He is the man who gave us the third branch of the tree of life, the archaea. I wrote to him, but he said he was too old to travel. Shortly thereafterwards, he died. And then when I looked on the internet, I found this wonderful tribute to him put up by somebody who had quoted the Greek, Pliny the Elder, put up Woese's picture, put up the tree, and this quote: "Nature is to be found in her entirety, nowhere more than in her smallest creatures." I would like to paraphrase this to tell you that chemistry is to be found in her entirety, nowhere more than in nature's smallest creatures. Where are you going to find the most wonderful chemistry? It is in microbiology. In our country, do chemists and microbiologists collaborate? No, they rarely do. And this is in fact very sad, because it is that kind of collaboration which is eventually going to give us a much better understanding of the chemical diversity of biology and of the chemical diversity of nature. I have now come to more or less my final slide. You may ask in this lecture, in memory of your founder, why do I draw your attention to such a disparate group of subjects? It is because of the environment, climatic, social, and political in which we live today. Some reflection on the roles of chemistry and biology in shaping nature may allow us to introspect on the course of human history and attempt to understand why the world today is the way it is. In my own personal view, the world today should not be the way it is. The world today is a deeply disturbing world, and the only happiness that you can get in today's world is that you are old, and therefore you will not be in it for much longer. But the study of science itself is a deeply humbling subject. I hope I have conveyed to you how any attempt to understand even the smallest of nature's creations can be deeply humbling. Finally, I turn to the coronavirus. The coronavirus is debated in the United States. It is debated in England. It is debated in Russia. It is debated in India. It is debated everywhere except China. But the coronavirus is a public health nightmare and an artist's delight. And you might ask, what is this virus? I can only end by quoting Peter Medawar in his wonderful book, A Dictionary of Biology, from Aristotle to Zeus. He quotes an anonymous source as saying that a virus is a piece of bad news wrapped up in protein. I've studied proteins for a long time, and I liked this because the nucleic acid, which is at the heart, which carries the genetic information, the RNA of this RNA virus, is coated completely in protein. The bad news is the nucleic acid. What protects the nucleic acid and allows it to enter your cells is the protein outside. But in order to understand the coronavirus, you must now understand the chemical biology of the coronavirus, and that is what scientists are trying to do the world over. So finally, I hope I have conveyed to you the importance of integrating chemistry and biology in the study of nature, in the study of biology in all its manifestations. In concluding, I can only thank. I don't have acknowledgements here because I have not presented my own research. I have only presented what I have read, what I have tried to understand. What has allowed me to read all this, what has allowed me to try and think about all of these are the two wonderful institutions in which I've had the privilege to be. The Indian Institute of Science in the top left, where I spent 41 years, and the National Center of Biological Sciences have given me a home in my post-retirement years. Both these institutions have offered an environment where you can read what you like, think what you like, write what you like, and really be free in reading the literature and understanding it in your own way. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much, Professor Balaram, for what a wonderful treat. Truly indeed, we are all grateful to you, Professor Balaram, for covering this large journey, this canvas, the depth, the spread. Unbelievable. I think we will be able to take some questions. So who is going to be?
We can probably. What a pleasure to listen to you, sir. What a pleasure it was. Awestruck. And I'm sure that I think the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, sir, will agree with me. Had we been in Hall 1, we would have mocked him and we would have given him a standing ovation. That is absolutely mesmerizing experience, sir. I think we should decide to go to can. What can I mix oratory and putting the signs, the practical signs. And this story which you have woven will stay with us for many, many years to come, sir. Thank you so much for honoring and being with us. I think we can take a couple of questions. I might go to the chat box because unmuting would precisely. You can type, sir, anything you are wanting to ask the question. If you may type it in chat box. Or you unmute yourself, you can pick it up. Nidhi Dubey.
Yes. Good evening, sir. It was a great privilege to listen to you, and especially on the topic which is very close to me. Although, like for last 2 years, I am trying to make myself understand that I should turn to vegetarian from being non-vegetarian. And one thing I just wanted to point out that the intestinal tract of a human being is more close to herbivorous than carnivorous animals that I like found through my research in a process of becoming a vegetarian. But my main question was like you pointed out two technologies, that was information technology and biotechnology. And in this pandemic situation, we are like more inclined towards information technology. And the experts in information technology, they say that by 2045, there will be a phase called singularity, where artificial intelligence will take over the thing that normal human beings are doing. And in this process, where do you see the normal biology and chemistry working for like for us? In like it will be more of like dominated by computer based stuff rather than going through a chemical evolution. Yes.
Are you a student?
Sir, I am DST Inspire faculty.
Okay, wonderful. So you're young. I
Yes,
need
sir.
to find out whether the questioner is young or old, because on a subject like this, the perspectives are quite different. But as a scientist, I will tell you that
Yes, sir.
in what the coronavirus has taught us, it's taught us a lesson. It's a lesson which politicians should learn, religious leaders should learn, human beings all over should learn. And I believe, most importantly, scientists who are getting into science should learn. Nature is a very, very diverse, and nature is very powerful. You don't know what it's going to do next. And neither information technology or biotechnology has proved of the slightest use in this pandemic. Not the slightest use. I speak to you because I am a coronavirus survivor.
Oh.
Okay. So I have gone through everything. So as a coronavirus survivor, science has not been terribly helpful. It has not produced a drug or a vaccine or anything which has really worked. Medicine has provided you to keep you going until your own systems take over. But I don't think artificial intelligence, I think one should be very, very careful of any term which you hear from very prominent people. If you hear words, if you hear a term, for example, like digital India, you ask yourself, what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
These are simply catchwords which use. And after some time, what happens is everybody repeats them. Artificial intelligence first appeared when I was a PhD student in the United States. I was in the university where the first artificial intelligence program was written, and it was for playing chess.
Okay.
That's what it actually became. So Herb Simon and Alan Newell, who did this, produced this. But now we are almost 55 years later, we are suddenly begun to talk about artificial intelligence. You ask people who tell you this, show me some example. It is like the human genome sequence. The human genome sequence now has been known for 20 years. You go back and ask specific examples which you can teach to students, where knowledge of the sequence has immediately led to an intervention which is working and which is common.
Right.
You will get these difficulties in thinking only when you go to teach. Today, if I go to a class and try to teach proteomics, metabolomics, or all the omics, I have nothing to teach.
Yes.
On the other hand, if I still want to talk about disease and mutations, I will go back to sickle cell hemoglobin, or at best to some other classical biochemical disease, phenylketonuria or something. So I think people should think about these things. There is no panacea which is coming from modern science. They're still using aspirin, no? I'm sorry if I took too long for your answer.
Not at all, sir.
You woke me, which is good.
I think your question has been well gratified, and I think the message is clear to you. We might take up one more question if we have. Dr. Khurshid Ansari is
Dr. Zina, thank you very much. I know, being a Unani physician, I know that my limitations are limitations to the science. But I just wish to say that this is the book Sapiens by Noah. I am started reading it. Thank you very much, sir, for your really a journey as a scientist who is instigating us to come closer to the nature. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir, we have seen the other side. If you are a poet, are you an artist? Are you a philosopher? I don't know, so many things we could just see in this last 35 minutes or so. You brought in William Wordsworth to the house, you brought in Jacobs, and you brought in and you concocted such a beautiful tale. The technology failed us, but the humans did not. And you are absolute epitome of what human being is all about. Thank you so much, sir. The dampening spirits because of the digital divide or the technology failure has actually brought us down. But then the Ananda mind lifted the spirits. So knowing the Ananda mind is like little, as you said, that is what our energy, and that is, and beautifully, as you just initiated your talk, you had brought in all the elements which Hakim Sahib was actually living and still living with us for. The way he had concocted the concoctions, his formulations, and they were primarily based on scientific principles, and what exactly Jamia Hamdard is doing now. Thank you so much, sir. We have no words. Had you been in the hall with us, we could have wrapped you with a shawl, as our Honorable Vice Chancellor and Pro-Vice Chancellor do it. But we still have a way of showing our gratitude. So I would request Rahil Saab to present the E-Certificate of Appreciation, and I would request our two guiding lights to join in. And I don't know how they would join in, but their presence is like joining in. That's exactly, and after that we will just present the certificate to you, sir. And maybe we'll just present it to you virtually. So that's the way things have been.
This is what the digital world does to you.
I know, sir. We're sharing the certificate, and this is the minimum we could do. We would really love you to be visiting our campus, and this is where we join in to present the certificate. We're absolutely honored and overwhelmed by your great presence. Thank you so much. And salute to the Corona barrier. So we can say that we can still defeat it. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. We may now move on to the next important part. So if you can just help me out quickly. This is a time which we await, and that is the time for the presidential remarks. We have our Honorable Vice Chancellor with us. He always not allows me to speak a single word about him. But today, I think digitally I can, he will not be able, he will allow me a little bit. So I'll just say an Urdu couplet and to my best capacities. So you please unmute your mic. We can't hear you.
So, I said, I wish I could mute you.
Oh my God. Sir, this is an Urdu couplet to just lift our spirits, and this is dedicated to both of the great people here. We have a microbiologist, we have a medicinal chemist, and we have the great speaker here. I don't know how well I will do justice to this great couplet. It says, "Jahan mein ahle iman surate khurshid jeete hain, idhar doobe udhar nikle, udhar doobe idhar nikle." So that is precisely the sentiments that we have, the luminaries like you, who are akin to the sun to us, and they are the guiding lights. So I have the privilege to present to the House our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Syed Ehtisham Hasnain Sahib, who has been guiding us since last 4 years, and ushering us into the new world. And I'm quoting him only. He says that we are moving into a new geography, or creating a new geography of excellence. And that geography is something which he was given as a legacy, and alhamdulillah, we are doing great justice to that. Coming to what he is, I think is a well-known, he always says that everybody knows everything about it except the shoe size. So you will have his profile, and that's too longish, but allow me to just speak a little bit about him. We always see him as a scientist par excellence, an academician and a researcher with unparalleled scientific demesne. He has been a key role player in the field of tuberculosis, and which has given a lot of scientific scientific data to fall back upon and to actually fight this particular disease. Of lately, you must be seeing his work in the area of COVID-19 as well. He himself is a scientist who actually is leading from the front in these times of pandemic, the research in this particular area. He has been the recipient of the topmost awards, primarily the one which is equivalent to the Bharat Ratna, the Order of Merit from the President of Germany, and he is precisely the elected members of all the academies. He is known for his seminal works in the DNA fingerprinting in the area of tuberculosis, as I just said. But we know him as a leader, we know him as a person who handholds us, we know him as somebody who is an academician, a scientist, and primarily a great friend to us. Thank you so much, sir, for leading us into this great geography of excellence, and definitely, inshallah, will pole vault further. With these words, I invite Professor Syed Ehtisham Hasnan, sir, for his presidential remarks on this very beautiful occasion of Founders Day. The digital divide had dampened my spirits, but now I'm absolutely happy that we have great luminaries who will just bridge that gap. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Zeenat. You have taken fully the digital thing, because I cannot physically block you. I normally walk and block the. Anyway, thank you so much, Professor Balaram, for being here with us. Thank you. I have no words to thank you. I've known you for the last few decades, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. The first time when I met you, I was introduced about you, and I said, "Oh my God, this man is so dry a person. Does he even smile?" Till I had a chance to go and meet you personally in your lab in the MBU. That was, I think, must have been 30 years ago or even more. And that is where I realized you are a man full of wit and humor. And the kind of spread that you have shown today, I think Zeenat rightly said, it's hard to figure out. Are you a chemist? Are you a biologist? Are you a poet? Are you a naturalist? What are you? I myself don't have any answer to that. I think we'll have to ask your wife, Hema, what is actual Balaram, or maybe your son, what your father is. But the latest that I've known about you is that you are a true somebody who has walked on fire, literally. This was amazing how you survived yourself, your father-in-law, who is 90 plus, and your wife, all three of you simultaneously being admitted to hospital for COVID plus and spending 2 weeks in a COVID ward in a hospital under medical care, and not knowing, you looking at your father-in-law, but your wife in a separate ward, and coming back, and you're still being able to be as normal as you. I'm sure Allah will bless you with more strength, and it's a lot to learn from you. This is great. Thank you so much for coming here. It's a lot of things that I've learned from you. The cultural evolution, I'll just touch on cultural evolution a little bit, but before that, let me salute you for a wonderful spread that you showed, that you gave in this great talk that we had, just about 42 minutes, but it was a wonderful talk. I wish we could have more talk, and please do oblige us again. This is I can say with great pride, I've been here 4 years, and I'm very happy that in these 4 years, we have been able to do this function every year. I'm 100% sure I will not be here on the 5th year of the Founders Day. And I'm sure whosoever succeeds me on the 5th year of Founders Day would be able to bring an equally distinguished, or maybe, hard to find an equally distinguished person after Professor Balaram. But we have set tough standards, and we have really been, university is really doing very well. And I'm very pleased to be here. When I was asked to take up, I thought this is a sleeping tiger. All I have to do is to wake it up. And I'm very happy that we have woken up this tiger. Today, we have now done very well. from a strength of 4,500 students 4 years ago. Today, we would be perhaps touching 11,000 or more students this year. Our admissions have been all online. More than 50%, 60% admissions have been made already. And I can tell you that we are attracting the brightest of the brightest students. COVID dampened our spirit because we thought with COVID, things may not be possible at all because we may not attract people. But despite COVID, we had more than 40,000 students who wanted to appear and take admission. We have to reopen our portal for admission. And I think there are more students still wanting to apply. And I'm very sure that we'll beat last year's record of 47,000 people applying for admission. This year, I'm sure it will be much more than that, despite COVID. We have been attracting very good students because we have been able to attract very good faculty. Our faculty recruitments we have done in the last few years have been extraordinarily good. People from the NIH, having a regular faculty position at NIH, having left and come and join a minority institution, a privately funded minority institution. That's a tribute to Hakim Sahib, a tribute to his legacy, a tribute to his offsprings who have been continuing to nurture this great institution. And I really want to salute them for this. We have faculty today who are coming, many of them are coming for the first time with their own money funded by the UGC Faculty Recharge or the Ramalinga Swami or the Ramanujan or the DBT Welcome Trust, the India Alliance Fellowship, the Intermediate Fellowship Program. Everything, I can continue to speak about it for hours together because I'm very fond of this place, the way it has grown over the last 4 years. And even before that, it has been a solid place. The entire credit for this growth must go to my faculty and my non-teaching employees, and of course to the students. It's a great place. I had no role to play. I was only very ably assisted. And in fact, I must give my tribute because this is the last time I'm addressing the Founders Day meeting in this university. So I would like to play on record the excellent work contributions given by my colleagues, Professor Ahmad Kamal, who I handpicked. One of the ways by which you have seen me in Hyderabad University. Hyderabad University was the only university till today that had 3 fellows of the Royal Society on its payroll during my time. And the reason we did, how we did was, I followed Mario Puzo's example, make an offer they can't resist. Then one day my daughter told me, Abu, this has a negative connotation also. Mario Puzo will ensure that you join, otherwise you'll be out. So don't insist on this too much. I have only a positive way of saying, make an offer that they can't resist, because I really try to bring the best people, and it was not very easy to get people who have been able to get here today. Young people who have joined, the people like Professor J.K. Batra, people like many others, including the most important, the senior colleagues who are here with me and ensuring that the university runs in an excellent way. COVID or no COVID, we are doing. There are many things I can keep talking to you about it, but I don't think it will be a good thing to talk about it much more because we're already gone beyond time. I had some notes to make, which I think I will ignore them and just simply say that it's a great honor that this university, which was not even known to anyone about a few years ago, is today recommended as an institution of eminence. The empowered committee is supposed to come and visit us anytime. Thanks to COVID, it was delayed, the visit was delayed, and we are hoping that they may come anytime, and then they will formally make an announcement and formally declare the university as an institution of eminence. I would like to put on record again all the contributions from my sponsoring body, from everybody who has made this possible for this university to reach this place that we are in. A very quick thing on how things have been doing in this COVID time, and I really learned a lot from your quotations from your lecture, Professor Balaram. I think you talked about cultural evolution. Who have been working with me despite COVID, and I think we could make our presence felt in this area. One of the things that we have been able to do, along with an Indian biotech company, is to develop a very simple antigen-based diagnostic kit which can detect COVID in a matter of 20 minutes. you will get the answer yes or no immediately and with a very high degree of accuracy, unlike other diagnostic kits which tell you where it is a yes means yes, but a no does not necessarily mean no. For us, a yes means yes, a no means no. And we have now approached the ICMR, and I'm very happy that this kit was developed at the Jamia Hamdard, and one of my colleagues and us, we had a role to play in taking it. We have already filed a PCT on this. Jamia Hamdard has filed a PCT. And likewise, we also have recently something very interesting. Few of my BTech and MTech students have been able to develop some apps. One of the app is a lady's nightmare. You don't know which camera is looking at you, what action of yours will be captured. So this app just lets your smartphone move around here and there and tell you, hey, there's a hidden camera somewhere. And this was in the news recently in Indian Express. Another app that has been developed by our Jamia Hamdard students is an app that allows digital learning easy. Now that is where I think you have rightly said, culture evolves, makes you evolve at a pace unheard of. The biological evolution will take millions of years and centuries to do, but cultural evolution can happen overnight. You walk into the market today, you will find people you can't even recognize till you have seen them a few times because their face is covered. You can only see their forehead but today in Delhi, at least what I see, people are moving around, but masked here, so you can still see most of them. And that's perhaps the reason why Delhi is seeing a surge in COVID again. Delhi is soon going to replace India and emerge as India's #1 COVID positive case because of people not taking things seriously. In my own university, I can see people who are completely ignoring the writings on the wall. And as you rightly said, and I want to quote you, you can neither information technology nor biotechnology nor AI and ML, some people call it Malay, machine learning and artificial intelligence. They say Malay is easy to understand. So none of these can actually help you. Nature has its own way of striking. And nature has struck the entire world. It struck irrespective of religion. Although people in our country were trying to ascribe a religious tone to the COVID controversy, nature has its own way of striking the rich and the poor alike. Nature is its own way of striking independent of where you are located, independent of geography. And the worst problem that we are yet to face is the economic shutdown, economy that has really faced. So I think that is something, and this is going to stay for a long time. So I believe, as you rightly said, I think cultural evolution is something that can force us to evolve. You wonderfully traced how lactose intolerance evolved us, but believe me, with this, our ability to take lessons by internet, for somebody like me, who is also very close to superannuation, I don't know why we use the word superannuation, Professor Balaram, but yes, I did not understand till you told me today. I think we will have to learn the hard way about how to respect nature. All this is, inability, and we do not know, we cannot predict what nature has in store for us in the next few years. It could be a more devastating an event. Nobody had predicted. We had pandemics in the past, but they did not cause the kind of devastation that this pandemic is causing. Not just deaths. People are saying death number is very small, but look at the economic consequence. Look at the post-COVID scenario. We have a very important functionary of a government who is now again admitted to the hospital for the second time because of post-COVID scenario. We all pray for his speedy recovery and he comes back to normal. But the fact is, COVID is unfolding itself in a fashion, in a way no other virus has ever done it. It's a beautiful virus, beautiful protein. That's where we need to respect biochemistry, and biochemistry teaches you your place in nature, and nature teaches you don't ignore biochemistry, because that's where you have to learn how to manage with this. There is no cure in sight. From whatever little work we have been doing, I can tell you that even if the best of the best vaccine comes out, there is absolutely no guarantee that that vaccine will work for us. If it is developed in India for us or developed outside, it will work for anybody. There's no guarantee today. As it is, you have seen that the Oxford vaccine, which was perhaps the most touted vaccine, the most respected vaccine had to be stopped because of problems with the vaccine. So I think we do have this problem. But once again, thank you so much. We have a long journey ahead, and I have no words to thank you. I would come personally to give you to hand over what we say as your amanat, as your something that belongs to you. It's temporarily in our custody, and we will come personally to put around you your shawl, the one we have. In Bangalore, I know it doesn't get very warm, very cold, but Bangalore is also still not, in winter times, it does, you need a small jacket. So if you will need this nice blanket, nice shawl around you, and I'll come personally also to give you this. I was very happy when I went to Salk Institute one day, a few years ago, and I saw somebody who has a certificate where I had signed. And I realized that he said, yes, Syed, I'm very happy because this is a real honor given to us. So I'm sure you will have, you'll feel happy that you have been able to spend time in a place which name is Hamdard. I don't know if you know the meaning of Hamdard. Hamdard means Hum aapke dard mein shamil hona chahte hain. I want to be part of your suffering. That was a philosophy of the late Hakim Sahib. And that is a philosophy that we have today. Today, many of my students are asking me, sir, give me some help in my fee collection, give me some help in discount. I said, look, we have our total survival on fees, although we don't charge an astronomical amount, we charge very small amount of fee. But we can't give you a discount, but we will give you some kind of, if you have done well, we will give you fee waivership. But we will allow you to deposit your fees without putting any penalty, without putting any surcharge over a period of time. And that is really benefiting a lot. But that is where our name comes. That's where. Thank you once again. Let's give Professor Balaram a standing ovation. All those who are still with us, let's stand up to give Professor Balaram a standing ovation for being here with us for this great event in the memory of our late Hakim Abdul Hamid Sahib. The morning I went to pray at his grave, which is here on our campus. I was there and I was very happy, and I prayed to the Almighty that why have you stopped creating people like Hakim Sahib? Please create more people like Hakim Sahib so that more and more people can be benefited by his generosity and the kind of vision he had, a selfless man made for others, made for everybody else. Thank you once again, Balaram. Jai Hind. I think we'll have now a small national anthem to be played.
So we have the vote of thanks for Professor Batra.
Sorry, I am extremely sorry. Professor Batra, you have a vote of thanks to be played. So we can sit for a while. We'll have a vote of thanks. I'm extremely sorry.
Sir, Ameen to all your prayers. And you have really endured the legacy of Hamdard well. And inshallah, we'll keep Hakim Sahib in prayers in our lives, and we'll go a long way, inshallah. Professor Batra, might I please request you to cast a vote of thanks?
Yeah, surely. So it's indeed my honor and privilege to propose this vote of thanks on this occasion of Jamia Hamdard Founders Day Lecture 2020. So firstly, on my own behalf and on behalf of the whole Jamia Hamdard community, I thank our guest of honor and speaker of the day, Professor P. Balaram, for accepting and gracing this day with his presence, though virtually. And as Professor Hasnain said, that maybe on some other occasion when better time comes, you will be with us again, and you will be, our students will be able to interact with you. So sir, thank you for your very comprehensive, insightful and thought-provoking lecture. It was indeed a treat to listen to you, as Professor Hasnain has already said. So I join him and others in saying that what a great discourse it was, and especially putting everything in perspective, the roles of chemistry and biology in shaping nature and in turn human history. So I must thank the Vice Chancellor for inviting you here. And over the years, we have been fortunate enough to be backed by our Vice Chancellor, who ensures that on such occasions, the Jamia Hamdard fraternity is exposed to stalwarts and leaders in academic work, and today was no exception. So sir, we thank you for that. So I extend my sincere gratitude to PVC Sahib, Registrar Sahib, and all deans and heads of the departments for their help and their cooperation in organizing this event. I also take this opportunity to extend most sincere thanks to the guests and audience who attended this event online. Thank you for being with us today. I would like to take this opportunity to place on record my hearty thanks to Dr. Zeenat Iqbal and her teams for so meticulously organizing this event.